My name is Gloria Thompson, and if you had met me 5 years ago, you would have said I was an exemplary wife. Those who wake up early, tidy up the house, prepare coffee, and they wait. They wait for a look, for a gesture of recognition. You know, for a thank you that never comes. But tell me, what makes a man? Why, Nancy Cobb, Aunickel 67, after 25 years of marriage, turn to the woman who has been by his side in everything and say that you want someone younger. It's strange how life can change in a single toast. Just when you think you're celebrating an achievement, you discover that you were just watching the beginning of the end. I know a lot of people watch this kind of story with a question stuck in their throats. How is it possible for someone to do this to someone who has given everything? Because I understand you, and I promise you one thing. By the end of this video, you'll find out what really happened that night. You will understand how a silent woman can turn into a storm without screaming, without fighting, and without losing her composure. Because what I said at that time left my husband speechless, and it changed everything. But before we dive into the heart of this story, I need you to know one thing. Nothing, absolutely nothing could prepare me for what my husband would say that night. It was in the main hall of the Watergate Hotel, surrounded by applause, laughter, and raised glasses. He was next to me, in that same navy blue suit he wore to our wedding. He took the microphone as if he was going to pay homage to me, and he began to talk about the past, achievements, love. But then, with a strange smile on his face, he let out the words that tore through my soul. It's time to move on with someone younger. This was not just a coup. It was a discarding ceremony in front of 100 witnesses. And yet, the county, tying, cup in hand and heart in shatters. When am I deceased? I breathed, and I answered, now, if you are here with me, listening to every piece of this story, I ask you with affection, support me. Mendeyam, Lenasil Tan, Badaka, Terixir Noken, that's okay. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay here with me until the end, because reliving it hurts, but it hurts less when there's someone on the other side who understands. Sometimes all a woman needs is to know that she is not alone when life decides to turn its back on her. In the early years, I thought silence was a sign of peace. Darren has always been a restrained, elegant man. One of those who speak softly and shake hands firmly. At the beginning of the marriage, this gave me security. I thought it was beautiful that he was so centered. So discreet. Little did I know that, in time, his silence would turn into an abyss. We woke up together every day at 6 a.m. in our apartment in the heart of Georgetown. I made the coffee. Eggs cooked just right. Toast soaked in real butter. The juice squeezed on the spot. He would sit at the table, open the newspaper, real now, and eat in silence. always looking at the economics section as if the world outside was more important than me. Sitting in front of him, Darren worked at a financial consulting firm. He was respected, known, dressed in expensive suits, well-polished shoes, and a pose of someone who knew where he was going. I was the woman behind the executive, the one who made sure that the tie matched the blazer, that the shirt was ironed, and that his name was up to date with all the cards and obligations. I took care of everything, from the house, lunches with the members, from travel, even from his mother-in-law's agenda. Celeste, his mother, me, was a constant presence, and uncomfortable. She never accepted me completely, although she was always polite, educated in that poisonous way, which hurts without screaming. She came on Sundays for lunch, and always had a subtle comment to launch. This table is beautiful. Too bad it's so empty. If I had a child, Moon, right? Moon. I smiled, and do, but inside, oh, it was as if she stuck a needle in my chest every time she said that. Because yes, we tried to have children for years, and when it didn't come naturally, I suggested seeking medical help. But Darren refused. He said that I didn't need to force anything, that if it were meant to be, it would be. I felt that he did not want the weight of a diagnosis that would reveal where the problem was. And, deep down, I began to suspect that he preferred not to have children at all. But he used time as an excuse. Still, now, I kept trying. I continued praying until one day I stopped, and we never touched on the subject again. Life went by. 25 years have flowed like water through their fingers. We traveled a lot, but not as a couple, always because of his work. Meetings in New York, congresses in Chicago, once conventions in Atlanta. Wow. And I was always there, next to him, in a discreet dress and smile on my face, like a luxury assistant who paid with her own youth to keep her husband well presented. At every event, the partners greeted him, and I stayed with the wives, those well-groomed women who talked about kitchen renovation and their children's colleges. I cringed inside. He feigned interest, but he would go back to the hotel and cry in the bathroom. I cried many times on that cold floor, kneeling on folded towels, sobbing silently so he wouldn't hear from the other side of the door. Not because he fought. Darren never yelled at me. He never raised his voice. He just didn't see me. And that, my God, hurts more than any scream. Being ignored by the ones you love is like disappearing in slow motion. There were days when I wondered, does he love me? And then he thought, did he ever love? But then he would bring me flowers on his wedding anniversary, or he would say thank you when I adjusted the collar of his coat. And that was enough. For a while, it was as if I fed on crumbs, hoping that one day, the whole bread would come. Yeah, I remember once coming back from one of these trips that he came into the house and handed me a bag with a French perfume. "The CEO's wife wears this one." "Why," she said, "it's striking." That sounded more like a comparison than a gift, as if he wanted me to mold myself in the image of another. I thanked him. Smile, Mihal. I used the perfume, and I felt invisible with an expensive smell. There was a time when I was mistaken, thinking that being socially respected was the same as being loved at home. After all, the neighbors praised us, said that we were a magazine couple. What no one saw was that, within the walls of our apartment, I was just a silent shadow next to a man who had long since left. All that was left was to let me know. No, there's one thing no one tells you about marriage. It's not abandonment that hurts the most. It is empty coexistence. It's the good morning without looking. It is the absence with physical presence. And it was in this daily silence that I got lost. I became useful, unloved, an unpaid employee of the home. Can I ask you something? Have you ever felt like you gave it your all, and yet it was as if none of it had any value? If this question touched you, he comments below with "I've lived it" or "touched me." Sometimes we need to know that we were not the only one. The cruelest thing of all is that I got used to it. I got used to being ignored, living on appearances to silence what I felt. And when I thought it couldn't get worse, the signs began. Well, small, nearly, I was deception on, discreet, now, but as clear as the glass of a well-washed window. And thus, when something inside me started to awaken, because behind all the silence, there is a voice waiting to be heard, and mine was about to speak. The first thing that changed was the smell. It sounds silly, I know, but after 25 years of waking up with the same man next to me, we learn to recognize even the perfume of thoughts. Darren has always worn a discreet woody cologne, one of those that say, "I'm a serious man." But on that Tuesday morning, I felt something different as he hurriedly passed through the room. A citrusy, fresh aroma. Nyadyan, dear, Akabakanukta, what a thing. Jovial. I was surprised, but didn't comment. That same week, he started leaving early for work, saying he needed to adjust processes with a new team. And she started working out again. Yes, working out. He bought sports shoes, downloaded a running app on his cell phone, and, on a Sunday, asked me to make a detox smoothie. I laughed, trying to disguise my discomfort, and said, "Whoa, nearly hour. Who knew?" They do. Darren, did you decide to become healthy after 50? He smiled. Nailed. I know the little knuckle sense terrible, hard believer child. But it was a different smile. A smile of someone who has a secret in his teeth. I started to notice other things. The sock drawer was more organized than usual. A new blazer appeared in the closet. And one night, when we were watching television, or rather, when the television was making noise to our silence, he blurted out of nowhere, "Have you ever thought about doing something new, Gloria? A fresh start, perhaps?" I thought it was a suggestion for a trip, maybe a garden makeover. But The way he looked at the screen, without staring at me, ah, gave me a shiver. It was as if he was talking to himself. But for me, that morning, I woke up to a muffled noise. Hallway light on. Light steps. I got out of bed in silence and went to the half-open door of the office. His voice was low, almost whispered. I pulled over slowly and heard. She doesn't know anything, but we have to be discreet. If she suspects it, everything can go down the drain. My heart stopped. I didn't recognize his tone. I didn't recognize the man I had slept with for 2.5 decades. I went back to bed with my body cold, as if I had been pushed off a cliff and was still in the air, not knowing where I was going to fall. The next day, nothing. I can't tell. He was sweeter than ever. He made coffee. He called me my glow, a nickname he hadn't used in years. He asked me if I wanted to go to the theater. I stood still. Scary how? Sometimes, affection can seem more threatening than indifference, because when someone who ignores you for so long starts, out of nowhere, to treat you well, something is about to happen. I spent the next few days in a disguised state of alert. With each message he typed smiling. Oh, my stomach tightened. Oh, with each sudden exit, my chest was heavy. Oh, I tried to rationalize. I told myself that it was an exaggeration, that it was just age messing with my head. But inside me, Mom, an old, forgotten woman, cried out, "It's not crazy. You just don't want to accept it." And that's what hurts the most. The moment when we stop protecting ourselves with excuses and start seeing the truth naked, cold and without makeup. I realized, right there, in the details, Darren was preparing me for abandonment, as if it were possible to soften a betrayal with flowers, dinners, and rehearsed looks. And even realizing all this, I still fought against what I felt. I still wanted to believe that it was just a phase. I was still afraid to ask directly. Afraid to hear the answer. No. But the truth, my dear, does not wait for us to be ready. It just arrives. And sometimes she comes dressed at dawn, comes with a new smell. It comes with suspicious silence. And when it comes, everything changes. Have you ever had this feeling? That something was wrong, but he preferred to remain silent for fear of finding out? So listen to me. Now. And so listen to me, because what I found out after that night, it wasn't just about Darren. It was about me and the woman I had ceased to be. Ah, but do you believe that, even after all this, there was still something that destroyed me for good? Something I saw with my own eyes, and that left me no longer any doubt. Want to know what it was? Then listen to what happened the following Sunday, because it was there that everything inside me has fallen apart. The hall was all decorated with white hydrangeas, just like at our wedding. Our golden lights reflected off the polished cutlery, and the crystal bowls lined up like soldiers awaited the toast. It was our 25th wedding anniversary. Silver anniversary. Wow. A milestone. And I, even with all the suspicions and silent pains, decided to dress with hope. I wore a deep blue dress, the same shade he praised at an event years ago. I put on perfume, did my hair, painted my lips carefully. Now, I entered that room believing, by a thread of stubborn naivety, that perhaps he would surprise me with something beautiful, that even after everything, perhaps there was some gesture of respect left. As soon as we arrived, I noticed the averted looks, the barely concealed whispers. Celeste, his mother, you added wow, greeted me with that porcelain smile, cold and fake, none, and said, you look beautiful, Gloria. He looks even younger. I smiled back. I knew it was poison disguised as kindness. When the guests were already seated, well, Darren asked for attention. He took the microphone. Now, I ordered a circle, adjusted the lapel of his jacket, and began the speech. At first, it seemed like a common tribute. It spoke of our trajectory, of our travels, of the ups and downs of a long marriage. He thanked me for my dedication, my partnership, and even my patience for so many years. People smiled, nay, toasted. Some even got emotional. I, motionless, felt a cold rise up my back. Something in his voice was too rehearsed, too distant. It was then that he changed his tune. He said that, throughout life, we need to have the courage to start over. That time passes, people evolve, and that we should not cling to what has already fulfilled its cycle. And then, looking at me, with all the guests present, he said, Gloria, I want to thank you for all that you've been, but today I choose to move forward with a new phase of my life with someone younger. It's only more with new dreams. I wish you peace. The last sentence was suspended in the air, like a wrong musical note in the middle of a symphony. No one understood right away, but when he opened the briefcase next to him and pulled out an envelope, which he handed to me as if it were a bouquet, I knew they were the divorce papers, signed by him, with blank space for my signature. The hall froze. Some looked at me, expecting a scandal, a scream, a reaction, but I didn't say anything. I felt my legs lose their firmness, but I remained standing. I held the envelope with one hand, and with the other, I raised the glass. I looked him in the eye, then in those of his mother, and I saw something I had never seen before. Relief, as if, for them, that moment was liberating, but for me, it was a public execution. The pain was not hot. It was cold, like ice breaking inside my chest. But even so, I breathed, and he just said, thank you. No irony, no anger. I'll do to you. Just one word, spoken with the dignity of one who does not stoop in the face of derision. I returned to the table, sat. I drank the rest of the bubbly, and watched the guests trying to disguise their embarrassment. Some gave me pious looks. Others pretended to talk about the buffet. No one had the courage to approach. And him, he kept smiling, talking to one of the partners as if he had just closed a big contract. There, no, I realized who he really was. And worse, I realized who I was by his side for all these years. I didn't cry, not that night, but inside me, something broke in a way that I couldn't stick anymore. Silence became my weapon. Because when a woman is betrayed, humiliated, and yet chooses silence, it's because she's keeping something bigger, something that will still happen. Ah, and you, do you know what I did with those divorce papers that same night? After I returned home? Oh, you need to hear that, because it was not what he expected. Not by a long shot. Wasted you, opportunity down. And then I arrived home with my shoes in my hand. The heel had been hurting me for hours, but I only realized it when I stepped on the sidewalk in front of the building. The night was cold, 9 hours, and yet I didn't feel anything. His body was on automatic, as if only he knew the way back. I entered the apartment, dropped the bag on the living room floor, and went straight to the bedroom. Oh, the blue dress, the one I chose so lovingly, slipped off my shoulders and fell like an old rag on the carpet. I didn't even have the strength to hang it. I just sat on the edge of the bed and stood there, staring at nothing, with the divorce papers still in my hand. The silence inside the house was dense, a silence different from that of before. Before? It was empty. Now it was full of words I never said, of questions that stuck in my throat for years, of moments when I should have left and didn't. I got up, went to the living room, sat on the couch and stayed there for hours. No television, no music, no light, no night, just me and the ghosts. And they spoke loudly. They showed me scenes of a lifetime. In their town. I remembered our first apartment, tiny, with the smell of fresh paint and hope. Mardenava. I remembered the nights we spent on the floor, dining on pizza in a box because we didn't have a table yet. I remembered how I believed that love was enough, that, with patience and affection, everything would be arranged. The year 2008 also came to mind. Darren lost his job suddenly. He was desolate, closed, and she sit on what I told Bhaktia, he was still. It starts see Tekla air. Locked in his room for days. I was the one who held it all back. I took more hours at the accounting office, sold my family jewelry to pay for the condominium, even held on to his credit card, which he used without even knowing that the money came from my effort. I never charged anything. I thought that was love. That marriage was just that. Bearing the weight of the other when he can't stand it. And now, I was the one who was down, and there was no one there to reach out to me. Cried and long, but it wasn't that scandalous soap opera cry. It was a slow cry. Eyes hot, almost mute. It went down my face as if it already knew the way. And the more I remembered, the more I understood. I wasn't crying just for what happened that night. I was crying for all the years I kept silent, for all the times I stopped being heard, for all the dinners he canceled at the last minute, for every Christmas he preferred to spend with his mother, saying that she was alone. I cried for the woman I was, for the woman he didn't see, for the woman I abandoned in the name of a love that only existed from the door out. I stayed there for hours, until the sun starts to rise. When the morning light came in through the cracks in the blind, I got up slowly. I went to the mirror, and I faced myself, the red eyes, the swollen face, the messy hair. Wow, underneath not the messy hair. But what caught my attention the most was the emptiness. There was no more sharp pain, just a hole, a mourning. And that's when I understood. I wasn't crying for the end of the marriage. I was grieving for myself. For my part, he killed little by little, day after day, until only a smiling, well-dressed shadow remained. And you know, I'm not a tell, I am here, opening my heart, telling my story with all the scars. To anyone who wants to listen, if you're listening to me, leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. I still have a lot of things in store to tell you, and sometimes all a woman needs is a space to breathe out loud. But the most curious thing is that same morning, after everything, I still made coffee. Dear night one. The force of habit is cruel. I prepared the coffee, put it in his favorite mug, the navy blue one with the initials embroidered, and then I stopped. I looked at that and thought, he doesn't live here anymore, neither physically nor emotionally. And even so, I continued the routine. Do you know why? Because when we live a long time on automatic, even abandonment becomes a habit. But that same day, something happened. One detail, a small movement that made me open my eyes for good, a clear sign that everything I suspected, it was true. Do you want to know what I saw right after that coffee? So, stay here. Because what came next was the snap I needed to stop being a spectator and become the author of my own story. That morning, after drinking breakfast alone, Abed Chutkanoshian and Yuant of Su or Andaljan Two-Way, I went to my room and stared at the bed made, that bed that, until a few days ago, was divided by two distant bodies. I stood there for a few minutes, in silence, but it was no longer a silence of mourning. It was another type, a more attentive silence, one who listens, and suddenly I realized something. Darren's cell phone was still there, on the nightstand. He had left in such a hurry that he forgot the device. That noun, for me, you, was as if the universe had put a key in my hands. I took out my cell phone, trembling hands, heart racing. I knew I shouldn't trespass, but at that moment, I needed the truth more than any principle. I tried the password, 4 digits, The dates he never forgot. First attempt. Whoa. 601. Our anniversary. Nothing. Monday. War. 124. The apartment number? Nothing. Third. Lister. 1989. The year we met. Unlocked. Nanya soon. A tightness in the chest. He still used the year he met me as the password. Ah, the irony burned. I started with emails. The most recent was an exchange of messages with an all too familiar name. Hayes, Nyantan, Alona Karikabo, Ajashid Sidutast, a lawyer who had helped us years ago with contract issues. The subject was straightforward. Procedure for renunciation and transfer of real estate. The next message contained an attachment with a sample document, which, if signed by me, would legally forfeit the Georgetown condo. The most disgusting detail was the phrase Darren had written in the body of the email. She still thinks we're celebrating 25 years. Right time to propose an equity adjustment. I felt my stomach turn. I continued. A folder of archived audios. Saved names with initials. One of them, S. C. Albwadenserencha, caught my attention. Touched. It was the voice of a young woman. Too sweet to be innocent. Honey, do you think she'll accept it quickly? Because I can't stand pretending to be just your colleague anymore. Introduce me as an assistant, at least. Go, come on. Another audio. Have you seen with your mother if she can talk to that accountant, you know? If this paperwork goes through, we will travel in July, home. With each new message, the truth was formed more clearly. It was not a simple betrayal. It was a plan. A cold and calculated dismantling of my life. Darren didn't just swap me. He tried to erase me. I opened WhatsApp. Frequent conversations with Celeste, the mother-in-law who always smiled at me with that veneer of kindness. In one of the messages, she said, Sierra is charming, young, articulate, much more aligned with their new goals. And further down, Gloria has always been stable, but it has no shine, and it's past the age to change. I felt like throwing that cell phone out the window. But no, it was all I needed. Proof upon proof. Darren, Newman, Sierra, that can, Woodtalk Pound, Celeste, Hayes. Wow, everyone knew. Everyone collaborated. I was the only one who didn't know about the play in which I was the main character myself. The only one who didn't have lines. And there, Liam, in that room lit by the morning sun, all pure, holding a device that carried the carefully engineered destruction of my story. I understood everything. It was not an impulse. It wasn't passion. It was calculation. He prepared me for abandonment. As someone who packs an inheritance that he does not intend to deliver, he tried to deceive me with false affection, to push documents under the pretexts of marital organization, and allied himself with those who always wanted me on the outside. The apartment, Selah, my stability, even my dignity, it was all part of the package he planned to dismantle while smiling next to me at dinners and birthdays. But I had an advantage. The most powerful of all. Liran Abolis Latvidai. Whoa. He thought I didn't know yet. That's it. Gave me time. Time to think. Time to breathe. Time to observe. I closed the phone. I wiped my eyes. And I promised myself one thing. If he was putting on a show, then I would be the actress who changes the script without warning. No screaming. No. No scandals. But with precision. Did he want to take me out of my home? I would show him that you don't take a woman out of her own history without paying the price. Now, tell me, can you imagine what I found out about that Georgetown apartment? Because what Darren didn't know, it was that he was building everything on top of a piece of land that never belonged to him. That's it, Neil. It changed absolutely everything. That afternoon, after all, I had read the serum, heard him, and understood. I went to the filing cabinet in my home office. There they were, organized in colorful folders. Decades of my life. Each leaf there told a part of our story. Or rather, mine. Receipts, contracts, joint statements, tax records, proof of transfers that I made to his name, myself. Wow. Loans paid off with my salary. I've always been meticulous, methodical, flashy, and in the end, that's what saved me. I took one of these folders, the green one, and there was the original contract for the deed to the Georgetown apartment. Gift from my parents. There was no dispute. The property was in my name, only mine. That, at that moment, was like recovering a piece of my body that had been torn out without anesthesia. I sat with the document on my lap and let the memories take me. The day we were married in a small chapel near Albany, New York, came to mind. It was a crisp autumn morning. I wore a simple lace dress with short sleeves and an antique brooch of my grandmother on the chest. Darren was handsome, emotional. He shook my hand all the time, as if he was afraid I would run away. That day, I believed everything. In love, in forever, no, in promise. Then we went to Cape Cod. We spent 4 days in an inn facing the sea. I remember one morning when we woke up before sunrise, and he said, with his head leaning on my shoulder, "With you, Anne, I can do anything." I wanted to believe that it was true. There were so many Sundays cooking for Celeste. I worked as if her affection were a possible goal. Table set with white linen tablecloth, on porcelain, inherited from my mother. Hanotti, roasts that took hours in the oven, and there was always a criticism. The meat was a little dry, don't you think? Or this seasoning is not very traditional. I smiled, swallowed, daring, accepted, no, because she thought that loving a man was also carrying the weight of his mother. I confused effort with deserving. I thought that if I did everything right, they would accept me, they would love me. I would be enough. There was also the time when we started talking about children. Leo, I wanted to, very much, but he always found a reason to postpone. Now is not the time. The work is too demanding. Let's enjoy a little more, just the two of us. When I suggested fertilization, what do you count? He became serious. Irritable? How? that is Albochai. Harachitirit. Cold. He said he didn't want a clinical process to have a child. When that this was something for those who force nature. Well, I was silent, and I abandoned the dream. I kept the name I had chosen for the girl, Abigail, inside a box of old jewelry. I never told him. I thought it would be no use. I became the woman who organized corporate dinners, who smiled at parties where no one knew my name, who did the math, balanced finances, changed light bulbs, solved insurance, everything. As he glowed, every promotion of his was mine too, but he never said it out loud. It was as if it grew up, and I just stayed there, like the ground, firm, invisible. Thou John, ha city dematted kai, and now I am the doubly so corner. Neither still postocks, sitting there with the papers in my hands and the memories boiling. I looked at all that and thought, was it really love? Or was I just convenience? Because what hurts most in a betrayal like this is not the exchange itself. It is the discard, the feeling of being treated as something defeated, an old contract, a subscription that no longer serves. No, there's a phrase that has accompanied me since that day. What destroys a woman is not the end. It's realizing that it was used all the time without knowing it. And if you've come this far with me, don't let go of my hand now, because, believe me, the most remarkable moment in this story is yet to come, and I need you until the end. That night, I went to bed early, the body tired, but the heart awake. There were no more tears, just a slow fire growing inside his chest. Not revenge, but of lucidity. I had everything. He had proof. He had the house. He had the truth. Only one thing was missing: deciding what to do with all this. And you may wonder, Gloria, what did you do the next day? When he came home, thinking he still had control of everything. That's that. I waited, now, and I let him speak. Only this time, I was listening with other ears, and what he said, now, it completely changed the game. The next morning, he came home as if nothing had happened. Wow. The same well-pressed suit, the same new perfume. One day out, item still promised that. The same smile of someone who believes he is in control. He walked through the door as if returning from a normal day, left the keys on the sideboard, gave me a kiss on the forehead and said, well, he said, are you okay, Glo? I smiled, a light, rehearsed smile, and I replied, yes, I am, but inside, inside I was different, and he didn't know it yet. I spent the day observing every step, every look, the messages he checked in secret, the way he didn't talk when I asked anything about the future. He thought I was still the woman who was waiting, seated, the one he trusted without asking, the one who cared without protecting herself. But that afternoon, after he left again, I pulled out the landline, the old one he would never track, and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. Aishas, my college friend. Wow. She was my study companion when I was studying accounting, and she was studying law. We drifted apart over the years, each one following a different path when I was little. But something told me that she would answer. And he answered. It was enough to hear my voice say, "Hi." It's May for her to fall silent. Waited. And I started to count. No rush. No crying. Only words. As if he were taking stones out of his chest. I talked about the betrayal, the speech at the party, the divorce papers, the apartment, the cell phone, the audios, everything. When I finished, there was a silence on the other end of the line, a silence that, unlike what I knew, what was not content. It was listening. It was presence. Then she said, "Gloria, you are not lost. You're only in the middle of their game. And do you know what is done with those who set up a game against you? You learn the rules. And he plays better. Nor that phrase, it pierced me like a light entering through the crack of a door closed long ago. For the first time in days, I straightened up on the couch. Well, the old town. I felt something inside me rearranging itself. The woman who was a wife, a caregiver, now not 46 to much town. Shadow. He began to rise as someone who remembered who he was before all this. I hung up the phone with the instructions very clear. The first thing I did was open the laptop and access our joint account. The money was there, intact. Half of it was mine, and for the first time in many years, I acted for myself. I made a transfer to an account of my own, which I didn't even remember existed anymore, opened when I was still working, before dropping everything to support his career. Then, wow, I started to organize the tests. I printed emails, downloaded messages, saved audios, organized folders with dates. With each click, pain gave way to strategy. I didn't cry anymore. I planned it. And it's funny to think how we spend our whole lives erasing our own strength so as not to bother us. We shrink, adapt, mold to fit what the other wants. And when she realizes, she turned to dust inside her own house. But all it takes is a push, sometimes cruel, sometimes humiliating, for us to remember what it is made of. Really. And at this point, I want to ask you something. Have you ever felt like you erased parts of yourself to keep a relationship going? Have you ever held the world on your back while pretending everything was fine? If this touched you, right here in the comments, I understand you, mon dear Dion. Or, it's true, because I know there are a lot of people living this in silence. That night, I slept with all the papers printed and organized inside a black folder. Thought about folder. I put it next to the bed, like a shield, and I dreamed. I dreamed that I was walking through an open field, alone, known, but firm. That is more. And you cast. It was not fear. It was relief. Is now I knew too much. And who knows too much? It is not easily lost. But what I didn't expect, it was what would come soon after. An invitation, a lunch, an unexpected gesture coming from the person I least imagined. And that's when that my revenge began to take shape without me even saying a word. Do you want to know what happened? So stay with me, because the play hasn't even started yet. That Friday, while arranging the last papers with Aisha over the phone, I received a strange correspondence. It was a letterhead envelope from a bank that I had never seen. I opened it in a hurry, still thinking it was a mistake. But no, it was a formal notice of default, a mortgage notification. The house, my parents' apartment, that same wedding gift that had sheltered me for 25 years, was being used as collateral for a loan Darren made, and more. Yep, the signature on the contract. It was mine. Or rather, a grotesque copy of my signature. I know the way my hand curves the G. That there, it was a fraud, do I? At that moment, what I felt was not just pain. It was vertigo, as if the world had tilted sideways. He had gone further. He used my name, my trust, my history, and now he was messing with what was left of my security. I called Aisha immediately. She asked me to scan the document and send it. Wow, this is serious. Gloria, forgery, bank fraud. We will act, but very carefully. All of this is going into process. I could barely breathe. Each heartbeat was like a muffled drum inside the chest, as if my whole body screamed. How far does he go? Later, I went after other documents stored in the hallway closet. I found a red folder, which I didn't even remember existed anymore. Inside, a yellow envelope with the name of our former family lawyer, Benjamin Harlow. Well, when my parents gave us the apartment, they insisted that the deed be registered directly in my name, with a protection clause in case of separation. People change. My daughter, now an old child. My mother said at the time, but a house is a port. You need a port that doesn't sink. I didn't quite understand what she meant. Hitherto, the document was still there, with the original seal intact. I cried, not sadness, but of a mute gratitude. My parents had already left, but there, on that yellowed piece of paper, they still protected me. Even so, it needed to be validated. It was a process. Nothing was immediate. And until things were made official, I continued to live next to him. One day so he suit you. A man who no longer pretended. Darren now walked around the house as if he owned everything. He made acid comments. You should cut that hair. Glow. How much it makes you even older. Or, need help with that ladder? I don't think your spine can hold out for long anymore. It was like that. Drops of poison disguised as a joke. He laughed, and me, I smiled too, but it was another smile. It was the smile of someone who listens to keep, and I kept everything. On Saturday, I saw something that made me stop in the middle of the hallway. He was in the office, his back turned, talking on the phone, the door ajar. I just heard, I've already bought the ring. How? See? It was expensive, but it was worth it. She would never have imagined. One day, which unwired, it was our song. Everything is practically ready. I just need her to sign the last part, and then we'll disappear. The ring. He used part of our savings to buy an engagement ring for another woman. How? While is still signing the condominium checks. While is still washing his mugs and hanging his shirts on the clothesline. My whole body froze. I felt my legs fail. I leaned against the wall of the hallway, as if I had been hit. And there, leaning against that wall, I thought about disappearing. I really thought. Packing a small suitcase, getting in the car, and driving to some nameless place, where no one knew me, where I could forget. But do you know what held me there? The memory of my mother, now declared Silagio, and seemed so not with buckets, ourselves in the kitchen, saying how, when a woman runs away, the world turns its back, but when she resists, the world bends. I wasn't going to run away. Not yet. He still had too much to say, even if in silence, because sometimes all you have is an old document, a folder with evidence, and an open wound. I saw. But this, it may be more than enough. And if you think he's done the worst, just wait to see what he tried to do at the next dinner, in front of witnesses. It was then that I understood. He didn't know who he was dealing with. Want to know what happened? So listen to what came next, because it was on that day that my turn began to take shape. Oh, that night, I didn't sleep. I stayed in the armchair in the living room, with the cup of tea cooling in my hand, looking at the city through the window, as if looking for answers in the lights of the buildings. Downstairs, everything took its course. Occasional horns, couples walking hand in hand, windows that went out one by one. Oh, up here, I was just silence, but inside, no, something was lit up. It was no longer sadness, nor anger. It was strategy. For the first time, I didn't ask myself, why did he do this to me? Anne, let's said here. I already knew. It was because I could. Because he thought I wouldn't react. That I would not have the strength. That I wouldn't be able to think for myself. What I really asked myself was, how do I turn this around? How do I play this game with my head held high, without lowering myself, without equaling myself, but without letting it go? I waited for the day to dawn. And when the first rays of sunlight touched the wooden floor of the living room, I got up, went to the bedroom, took a shower, put on my best blue blouse, the one I wore to work meetings, the one that reminded me of the competent woman I was, and took the folder with all the documents. I called the office of Benjamin Harlow, the lawyer who handled the deed to the apartment in 2005. I didn't have to explain much, just say my name, and he made an appointment for the next morning. I arrived at his office at 10 o'clock. The secretary recognized me right away and offered me a coffee. I'd dismissed it. My stomach was closed when I entered Benjamin's office. He greeted me with a firm handshake and a look of someone who understood that this visit was not for kindness. I sat down. opened the folder, now, handed over the papers, and just said, 1. I need to know what really belongs to me, and I need protection. He examined the deed document carefully, turned a few pages of the 2005 archive, and then looked at me with an expression he'll never forget. It was a mixture of surprise and respect. Gloria, this property, it's yours, only yours. It is registered as a direct donation from his parents prior to the marriage. There is no contest possible. Any attempt to use this property as collateral without his true signature is illegal. At that moment, I leaned back in my chair and breathed. For the first time in weeks, I breathed with a full chest. I had a shield. Now, I had something solid in my hands. Darren could have set up the theater, deceived half the world, now falsified documents, but he couldn't steal my story, my house, my ground, Nina's Canardwald. And it was there, in that brown leather chair, with the sunlight hitting the picture frame on the shelf, that I decided I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to fight back with elegance, with justice, with every bit of the truth he tried to hide. And I was going to let him dig his own hole. No, because sometimes all a woman needs it is to let time work for it. If this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, what will it help me to carry it forward? Like and subscribe here to the channel. It makes more difference than you think. Sometimes we just need to know that we are not alone. I returned home, calmer. Why did Darren? I entered without making a sound. Whoa. Darren was on the phone. Again. He was talking about a trip. He used terms like new beginning, freedom. Finally, things will move forward. Well, I went to the kitchen. Prepared some tea and was silent. But inside, there, a butching one. Inside, on an ancient cow. I smiled. Life. He thought he was still manipulating me. But the stage was now mine. And he didn't even dream of what I was about to do. Because the question now was another. How to show him and everyone that those who underestimate a silent woman end up hearing the echo of their own pride? And that's when, that the invitation to dinner with his family arrived. An invitation that he himself gave me. Thinking it would be the stage of his victory. Little did he know, which would be exactly the opposite. Want to know how everything started to change that night? So, wait and listen. I beg you come and talk to Stibisio, because it was at that dinner that the mask began to fall. I have never been a woman of many tricks, but I've always been good at numbers. And at this stage of my life, numbers became my greatest shelter and my best weapon. After leaving Benjamin's office, I went straight to the bank. There, I opened a new account in my name, in a different bank from the one we shared. Transfer the amount that was due to me from the joint account, what was still there. At least, I did everything calmly. Hair up, simple clothes, serene face. No one would suspect what was really going on. I filed the registry office with the documents of the Georgetown property, asked for the registration to be updated. Now, validated the donation made by my parents and formalized the deed in my exclusive name. It was symbolic. Signing that paper was like taking back my existence, as if each line recorded was a piece of me recovered. In the following days, I went deeper. I called the international law firm that handled the affairs of my great-aunt Frida, who lived in Munich and had left me as the universal heir. For many years, I left everything idle, stored, quiet, an asset that included 2 apartments in Germany, a well-stocked euro account, and another in Miami, opened in the 90s, which I never touched. At the time, I thought it was exaggerated. You're going to need this one day. Gloria, no. Money is just silence, saved for when the world screams. Now, Harlin and Jenny, I understand what she meant. With legal guidance, I started to regularize everything. Declaration of inheritance. Why? Translated documents. Tax validations. I consulted a tax expert, a gentleman named Edward, who treated me with the delicacy that no one else had offered me for a long time. You have a solid foundation, Mrs. Gloria, and much success. You just need to organize it, and that's what I did. One by one, I put each paper in the right place, each resource in its proper space. Silently, discreetly, I turned the board, but without making a sound. I also went back to studying the contracts Darren made me sign at the beginning of the marriage. Contracts that I read quickly at the time, trusting that he wouldn't put anything in there that would hurt me. Now, under Isha's magnifying glass, every clause became revelation. There were gaps, failures, inconsistencies, and tests that he moved funds without my knowledge, that he hid values, that he manipulated our joint pension so that he had priority access. But calmly, though patiently and firmly, I went to where he worked and, with the help of a Social Security lawyer, I was able to request a review of the records and insert my name as the sole holder of the corporate plan that he said was ours, but never was. I was silent on the outside, but inside, it was as if I were building a fortress, brick by brick, document by document, everything calmly, all with method. No, because when a woman understands that she no longer needs to ask, she starts to do it. And it was at this pace that I transformed, from the betrayed woman to the armored woman. And look, if you've come this far with me, let me tell you something. The most remarkable part of this story is yet to come, and it will be worth every second, because what he thought would be the end of my story, it became the beginning of his, and I did it all in a way that neither he nor that girl he chose could predict. But you must be wondering, and him, Darren, didn't he notice anything? My dear, realized, too late, and the first sign that he was suspicious He came to a dinner that he himself scheduled. Why, thinking that I would show up with my head down. Why, but who arrived at that restaurant? It was another woman. And what I said at that table, it still echoes in his head to this day. Want to know what it was? So get ready, because now, on to a party, because now the truth began to make noise. The days that followed were silent on the outside, but deafening on the inside. Every time I walked into the guest room, where Great Aunt Josephine's inheritance paperwork was lying around, once I felt like I was putting together a puzzle where each piece revealed a new facet of the betrayal. And then, no, oh, on a cloudy Sunday, I received an unexpected email from the international office in Munich. An attachment drew attention. Ah, well, they were exchanges of messages made months before my aunt's death, and there, in the middle of the copies, a name froze me. Down. Darren Price. My Darren. Well, once stuck I. On the lobby here. He had exchanged emails with a real estate agent in Miami, asking about buying an apartment in the name of a third party in the same condominium as the property I would later inherit. The date? 2 months before his aunt died. Lee, the doctor. He knew. Well, now, he knew about the inheritance. Oh, wow. He knew about the property. Down. Nurse. He knew everything before me. And he tried to get ahead. Oh, to infiltrate. To take possession of what was not his. I opened the files and started to cross-reference information. And there it was. Sierra Lee. The girl's name appeared in guest records of closed events in that Miami condominium. Small cocktails, evening parties, art performances. She was already there. Oh, and not alone. Video. In one of the attached photos, wow, I saw a familiar figure in the background. Darren, light coat, nice, glass in hand, toss in hand. The same watch that I used years of my salary to buy. The same pose, as always. Arrogant, confident, laughing, while I was still at home, believing that I was taking care of a wedding. No, but Toto, and so did not still chikoi to Chishant. They strolled through what should be my future. It was there that I understood. The betrayal was not only marital, it was designed, planned, nay, cold, profound. How? I took a deep breath and sat on the sofa in the living room. The weight of that discovery gave me a feeling that it was no longer pain. It was something else. It was a serene, firm indignation. That kind of indignation that doesn't scream, but that builds. Because when a woman realizes that she has been deceived, not only in affection, but in history, sweat, intelligence, she does not take revenge with fury. She rewrites calmly, leonid, words, elegantly, fairly. No, me. There are memories that mark us in a way that we can't erase. It doesn't matter how many years pass. Sometimes it's a letter, a conversation, a photo like this. And I wanted to ask you, have you ever experienced something like this? A memory that changed everything? That turned the key inside you? Share it with me here in the comments. Tell me something about your trunk. Sometimes Sharing a memory is also healing a part of it. I went back to my room that night with a purpose. The folder with the inheritance documents was ready. The organized tests, the Miami records connected to those of Georgetown. What is you? I had in my hands not only the reason for the coup, but his trail. And when I looked at all that paperwork, I found myself going back to that girl who was studying accounting at dawn, trying to win in life with the strength of her own head. And I realized that girl never died. She was only silent for a while. And now, Malina, she was back. The dinner with his family, scheduled for the following Saturday, would be the stage. He still thought I would go with that usual restrained smile. Demure. Passive. Little did he know that woman no longer existed. Do you want to know what happened when I walked into that restaurant? The way everyone looked at me? No. And what did I reveal in front of his own mother? Get ready, because there, justice began to whisper. Dinner night arrived with that bittersweet smell of trapping. It was an Italian restaurant, one of those sophisticated ones, where the music is low and the smiles are even more discreet. It's in a quiet corner of DuPont Circle, frequented by retired judges and well-dressed wives who talk more with their eyes than their mouths. Darren chose the place. Of course. He always liked places where he could seem important, where the low lights covered up what he really was. I arrived on time. I wore the same emerald green dress that he said was too conservative. I tied my hair, put on burgundy lipstick, and carried the folder with the copies of the documents in my bag. And something more, a discreet recorder, turned on before I even got in the car. Darren was already there, as always, with his glass of wine half full and his cell phone on the table. He greeted me with a smile I knew well, the one he wore when he wanted something. He pulled up his chair for me, signaled to the waiter, and said, casually, "You look beautiful. Glow now, like in the old days." I just smiled and sat down. I didn't return the compliment. He noticed, but followed the script he had prepared. He ordered pasta. No. Commented on the stock exchange. Praised the decoration. Talked about the weather, as if nothing was happening. Until, between sips of red wine, he took a beige envelope from his briefcase and placed it gently in front of me. It's just patrimonial updates. Simple stuff. The lawyer asked us to sign before the end of the month. That way we avoid bureaucracy later on. I took the envelope calmly. I felt his weight in my hand. Open. There were 3 leaves, all with technical language, legal terms that tried to seem harmless, but I already knew what they were. The last attempt to make me give up. Definitively. The rights to the property and part of the investments. I looked at him and said, in a soft voice, "Do you mind reading aloud to me? I've tired eyes today." He froze for a second. No. He blinked quickly. He tried to laugh. "I have nice days, Gloria. You've always been better with contracts than I am. Remember? But today I prefer to listen." Do you know what you're asking, Darren? I said, slowly, firmly, still smiling. His fork stopped in mid-air. 1, 2. The hand trembled slightly. He tried to regain control. Ah, not so serious. It's just a formality. That way you are free from all this and can move on with your life. The house we sell later, under what a terrible testament, watchdog. Or you give me the right to negotiate, and it'll solve everything. I put the glass of wine to my lips, without drinking. Then, I crossed my eyes with his. You wanted my house. With what right? Really? The silence that settled at the table was unlike any we have ever had. It was not the silence of routine, nor that of contempt. It was that of fear. For the first time, he realized that I knew that something had escaped his control. He tried to change the subject. He asked about my health. He spoke of a new restaurant he wanted to visit, but the voice was already different. His face began to sweat. Do you still think I'm the same woman who signed without reading? Darren? I whispered. But in such a way that he heard every syllable. You underestimated those who have been silent for too long. He shifted in his chair. He moved the napkin. The hand trembled. He tried to laugh again, but came out weak. Gloria, let's be adults. There is no reason to turn this into a war field. We can do this in a civilized way. Civilized? I repeated. Hell, you forged my signature. You mortgaged my parents' apartment. You lied to me and your own family. Civilized. It's me to still be sitting here. Looking at your face without spitting out everything I know in front of these people. The words came out sweetly, but they cut like a razor. And Sumanan. He did not answer. Long. And I didn't force it. I took the papers, folded it calmly, and said, I'll take it to analyze. After all, you taught me to be cautious. He nodded, mute, as if he had forgotten how to speak. On that table, he saw no explosion. He saw no scandal. But he saw something far worse for him. A woman who knew that she was too calm. So that he no longer trembled. And that he had more letters than he imagined. Now, but what he didn't even dream of was what would come next. Because everything I recorded in that conversation was delivered the next day to the bank's lawyer. And along with that, I attached the evidence of fraud, of the attempt at misappropriation, of the false signature. Now, it was a matter of time before his world began to crumble. Do you want to know how he reacted when he received the official notification? No, my dear. Then it was his turn to try to escape. And exactly it that I showed that justice also knows how to walk in silence. The morning everything was shipped, I woke up early. I made sure to have a clear head. The envelope was ready on the table in the room. The formal notification of separation, signed by me and filed by Aisha's office, with copies of the evidence of the attempted fraud, the forgery of signatures, and the concealment of assets. A clean, direct, firm document. No name-calling. No personal accusations. Only the facts. Only what he tried to hide, now revealed on letterhead. Ah, I sent it by email and also by a messenger, with a receipt going on. At the same time, I made the last bank transactions. I canceled the joint cards, removed my name from any authorization linked to it, and blocked all of its access to the accounts we still shared. I called the bank and asked them to formally notify them of any future attempt at misuse. Then I went to the condominium office and requested the lock to be changed. I presented the updated documents, stating that Darren no longer resided there, and asked that any attempt to enter be reported directly to my lawyer. They complied on the spot. After all, the property was mine. It always has been. He just pretended to forget about it. With the copy of the new keys in my bag and my heart pounding, I went to the company. I walked into the office with my head held high. I asked for a meeting with the Human Resources Board and formally requested a 10-day leave. Reason: personal and legal issues. They approved it on the spot. I received curious looks, but none had the courage to ask. And I didn't say either. I gave only a slight smile, grabbed my bag, and left. I stopped by the house, changed clothes, prepared a small suitcase, and went straight to the airport. I bought a one-way ticket to Miami. No plans, no hotel reservations. No, only the address of the property inherited by my great-aunt Josephine, the one he tried to take before I even knew it was mine. I arrived at night. The air of Miami was different, warmer, nay, more humid, nice, but also lighter. I took a taxi and asked him to drop me off at the address. The building was discreet, elegant, with a well-kept garden and a quiet concierge. The doorman, mine, what your name's, a gray-haired gentleman named Enrique, greeted me kindly. Are you the new owner? He asked with a smile. I nodded. He handed me the access card, opened the automatic gate, and said, "Why, welcome, Mrs. Gloria." I went up in the elevator with trembling hands. When the door of the apartment opened, I took a deep breath. The property was furnished, as my aunt had left. A light blue sofa, white curtains, madera, adorno nostri signature, a pasta, orchid, art books on the shelf, and a soft smell of stored wood. I walked slowly through the rooms. I touched the furniture, opened the windows, let the breeze in. It was all hers. Now, pity. It was all mine. No, there was no trace of Darren there. Nothing of his voice, his perfume. No, his absences. There. He never set foot there, and I would never step on it. It was a piece of the world of my own, for the first time in years. The silence was light. It wasn't pain. It was a new beginning. That night, I sat on the couch with a glass of wine and looked out over the city from the balcony. Below, the lights of the cars danced among the palm trees. I called Aisha and just said, "It's done. She smiled on the other side and replied, "How? Now it begins? Whoa, Gloria, now it's about you." And it was. There, in that new place, with new keys, no rings, no rings, no documents to sign. I closed the door to what I had been. From the decorative wife, I have no day of the forgotten woman, one, from the storyteller of others, and I began, finally, to write mine account. But you must be wondering, did he accept? Did he swallow all this quietly? Oh, it would be too easy, wouldn't it? Darren never liked to lose. And when he realized that he had lost, he tried one last move. Only this time, he was the one who was unprotected, and I will stay ready to show that dignity is not negotiable. Want to know what he tried to do? So prepare your heart, because his last act, it was as low as it was predictable. And the answer I gave, it was the quietest and most relentless of all. Darren's first call came on the third day of my stay in Miami. I had already disconnected myself from everything that tied me to the old routine. I even changed my cell phone number. But I left a temporary one only for legal matters, which Aisha monitored. Nay, those in a She warned me. He called. Hi? Thrice. He seems nervous. He left a message. I didn't ask to listen. I just asked her to record everything. The next day, wow, an email arrived, long, with a regretful tone, mixing sentimental phrases with technical justifications. The part that made me laugh inside, wow, was when he wrote, "I think we got confused. Maybe we drifted away due to lack of communication. I thought about doing a renewal of vows in an intimate event, a surprise for you." Surprise? I almost responded with a thank you. But I have had too many surprises in this life. But I preferred silence. He didn't even deserve my sarcasm anymore. In the same email, Darren asked for an amicable reconciliation without involving lawyers, as if everything he did was just a minor disagreement. Aisha responded impeccably, with the elegance he never had. My client has no interest in attending events, ceremonies, or gatherings. All communications must continue to be made through this legal representation. And that's when panic began to appear, a panic disguised as kindness, typical of someone who has always manipulated others with smiles. On the same day, I received an unexpected message in my personal email from Celeste, the one who treated me as the infertile one of the time, now called me Dear Gloria. The text began with a litany about the mistakes we all make, and ended with an absurd request. Could we meet, have tea, talk as a family? We shouldn't get rid of a misunderstanding. I read that and could only think, how can someone who laughed while I was humiliated now come to order tea? Tea with poison? Perhaps Sierra known Arkansikan Antisel, it seems, was not as calm as they were. Aisha found out that she filed a legal request to try to secure the Miami apartment as the couple's property. She even presented message exchanges between her and Darren. where he promised to solve everything and make the new life official with her. But there was a problem. Wayne does say that property never belonged to Darren. It was never in his name. It would never be. He promised what he didn't have. And now the false promises came back to charge interest. No, Anne, there are things that we live and keep, but maybe by telling, we help another heart to breathe. So, if this story is touching you in any way, leave a like on this video and subscribe here to the channel. There are many women living what I lived, silent, with their hearts tied. If my story can be a mirror, then I love you, or even a push, let it get where it needs to go. While Darren tried to put out fires with leaky buckets, I walked away in peace. For the first time, my nights had no voices repeating mistakes, no muffled sound of sorrows. In my apartment in Miami, I stood wakes out a while, not so. I listened to the city as if it were music. The distant horns, the footsteps in the hallway, and the wind beating on the windows. It was as if the world had given me back something I didn't even know I had lost. My own presence. But calm down. Don't think he gave up easily. Darren still tried. And he tried everything until he said that he was sick, that there was no one else, that he had been manipulated by his mother and Sierra. But it was too late, because what he lost, it wasn't just the wedding. It was respect. It was the right to look at me as if he still had any power over me. And if you think he landed on his feet, he was wrong. The fall came, and it came strong, because the consequences of the lies began to knock on the door. And in the next chapter, you will see what happens when the truth appears before everyone. And the one who has pretended for so long finds himself naked. Want to know how it all came crashing down around him? So hold on tight, because when the mask fell with shrapnel, that ballroom at the Watergate Hotel, it looked the same as before. But it wasn't. Oh, it was another stage now. Another kind of spectacle. Not easier. That other June, when I walked in that navy blue dress ID kept for so many years, the same one I wore for our first Christmas together, I felt all eyes on me. But this time, not as a supporting actor, the ambient music, the glasses shining under the chandeliers, the laughter that came from the corner of the mouth. Be seen, Captain. Everything was the same. But I wasn't. My soul no longer wore the same skin. I entered alone, head held high. Every step I took on the carpet seemed to echo in the hearts of those who thought they knew me. Darren was already in the center, one out, when a still location, surrounded by people, near them a calm, calm, smiling, as he always did, that smile that I learned to decipher as armor. When he saw me, he froze for a second. He didn't expect me to go. Maybe she had dreamed that I would be at home, quiet, like in the old days. But I went, not by him, nor for revenge. I went for myself, because certain stories we need to end with our own voice. And there are pains that, when exposed to light, are no longer wounded and become strength. The party was set up as a celebration of his new cycle. The guests, for the most part, co-workers, old acquaintances, and those who have always revolved around his influence. Even Celeste was there, sitting at a table near the stage, using too many pearls and too little humility. Sierra, no, yeah, in a red dress too short for the occasion, while stood next to him. No, talk to audio that you what could leader a car, as if she were a legitimate part of that scenario. The plan was clear. Now, one last blow, a public farewell, disguised as a celebration. When Darren took the microphone, I didn't see what come. The journal washer still no weekend. I knew how. I knew it was time. He began by talking about the life that changes, the maturation, the courage to seek new paths. The audience smiled. Why, none to ahen odd. They don't want to still, thinking it was a speech of renewal, until he said, what starts out beautiful doesn't always end the same way. Sometimes it is necessary to release so that both can fly. And I chose to start over, next to someone who brings light to my days. At that moment, he held Sierra's hand. The hall fell silent. People didn't know whether to applaud or expect more. And that's when I got up. I walked slowly to the stage. Darren looked at me with wide eyes. I asked for the microphone. He hesitated. But in front of everyone, he couldn't deny it. I took a deep breath and I started. Good evening, everyone. Before they left, thinking they had witnessed a story of courage and freedom, let me tell you the other part. The part that wasn't in the script. The first few pages of the documents were in my bag. Did you? I took them one by one calmly. The hall was muted. I was alien. Gloria Thompson. I was Darren's wife for 25 years. I was a companion, counselor, business partner. When I do where need you not self down, and the pillar of the house that he is now trying to erase from his memory. The condominium where we live was a gift from my parents. It has been registered in my name since before the wedding. Here's the original deed, dated 2005. I showed the document, lifted it for everyone to see. It was not a spectacle. It was justice. While he was talking about starting over, I discovered that my signature had been forged, that loans were made in secret, that Sierra, present here, I didn't welcome, received a ring bought with money from our joint account, and that my inheritance, yes, the one he tried to take before I even knew it existed, was used as bait for promises he could never keep. Sierra let go of his hand at that moment. Celeste lowered her eyes. Some guests coughed. Uncomfortable. I continued, without raising my voice. I have the emails, the statements, the contracts here. No, they're not. But it's such an intimidator. Hope did you more? I was started. But I didn't come to prove anything. I've already won. Next, because what he tried to do to me, with silence, contempt, and lies, turned against him. walked ignorant, and all that was left was this, an empty speech spoken by a man who lost everything he did not know how to value. I paused. I looked at Darren, who was white as paper. His voice was gone. His hands were sweating. For the first time, he didn't know what to say. You tried to erase me, Darren, but it was you who got lost. It was at this point that my voice faltered for a second. Not sadness, but really, those truths that hurt, but liberate. I looked at the audience one last time. May this night remain as a memory, not of your choice, but mine. I chose to respect myself. I chose to leave with dignity. And, above all, I chose no longer to be an accomplice in my own invisibility. I returned the microphone to the pedestal. I came down from the stage slowly, feeling each step as a reckoning with the lost years. And as I walked past the tables, I saw the looks change. Too bad. For respect, if you've come this far with me, stay. Because what happened next? It was even more unexpected. A phone call, a piece of news, and one last gesture from him that no one saw coming. And that sealed everything with an end that even I could not imagine. Are you ready to know? Then take a deep breath. Why? Because the last act is yet to come. The days following the party were fast, relentless, and quiet for me, but devastating for Darren. As soon as the microphone video dropped on social media, his every look, every gesture of it was amplified. At first, he tried to keep his composure, sending messages to colleagues and customers, explaining that it was all a misunderstanding. But no one bought it. The viralization was immediate. Coworkers commented on LinkedIn, on corporate WhatsApp. Acquaintances who had never crossed his path now shared the video, commenting on how calculating he had been, how much he tried to take advantage of the naivety of others, and, more importantly, I didn't have to lift a finger other than to show the truth. Every test was there, white, unequivocal. The microphone doesn't lie. At the emergency meeting at the company, the board of directors was waiting for him with harsh expressions. The CEO, a man who has always respected him for his financial talent, looked him straight in the eye and said, "Darren, I can no longer trust someone who harms colleagues, family, and partners for their own benefit. Your conduct is incompatible with this company." He stuttered, tried to argue, made excuses, but his every word was silenced by irrefutable evidence. Fraud, minded, manipulation, public disrespect. He was fired there, with no possibility of appeal. The power he thought he had evaporated before everyone. Celeste, his mother, was in shock. That cold smile she always sported at dinners and meetings turned into genuine concern. She had to sell the house in downtown Silver Spring to cover the debts he had taken on, loans in her name, purchases made with funds that were not his, broken promises to Sierra. The glamour of the mansion is gone. The space was now small, cramped, and each room seemed to echo the memory of lost arrogance. And Darren, who had always counted on his mother's presence and protection, now depended on her for a roof in a reality he had never faced. Sierra Palm, the young woman who thought luxury would come for free, disappeared from her life. She confronted him personally, with the anger she had always kept silent. You promised me an apartment. He promised me wealth, status. I trusted you. What now? Nothing. None of this is real. He tried to explain, justifying empty promises. But it was too late. There was no more illusion. Why? Not even the mistress he considered a reliable accomplice was by his side. Loneliness set in quickly. Why, accompanied by shame and haze. How? The lawyer, who architected it with him, now disappeared. No one saw or heard of it. Fear of being reported for unethical conduct. Fear of exposure. That man who always seemed to smile in Georgetown law offices disappeared. Well, as if he had evaporated into thin air. Every ally Darren believed he had fell apart at the exact moment the truth was served. Darren tried to maintain a routine, but there was no more respect. Co-workers who had once greeted him with reverence now shunned him. Silver Spring, which had always been his safe base, became a prison of quiet humiliation. Every visit to the store, now every step on the street, was accompanied by looks of curiosity, of murmured comments. That 53-year-old man, who believed he could dominate and control, now moved cautiously, ashamed, no, devoid of any prestige. Meanwhile, I watched from afar, from my apartment in Miami, the life he thought he could take unraveling. It was not revenge. It was not unbridled joy. It was a fact. Justice. Silent, done through truth. His power had not been destroyed by shouting, nor by anger. It was destroyed by evidence, by the exposure of what it has always tried to hide. And every time a notification arrived on his cell phone of charges, cancelled contracts, missed calls, I felt a strange peace. Life went on, but he now needed to learn the value of what he lost. And me? I had freedom, dignity, wine, and an intact future. The inherited properties, no, ways, the secure accounts, yes, out, the silence that became my shield. I could walk the streets of Miami, open my windows, feel the wind on my face, and no one, absolutely no one, could touch me or diminish me again. The humiliation he planned for me turned against him. Every step of arrogance, every calculated lie, every manipulation was neutralized by what I have always had most valuable: prudence, patience, and truth. But the best was yet to come, because his downfall did not end with material loss or public humiliation. There was one last surprise, an unexpected closure, which showed that when the truth finds the right moment to appear, there is no mask that resists. And what happened that next morning, when he finally realized that every thread of the net he wove had become a trap for him? It's something you won't want to miss. The question now is, would he be able to get up, or would the weight of his own falsehood already keep him on the ground? The answer, is about to be revealed. Back at my apartment in Miami, life took a different pace. In the morning, I opened the balcony doors and let the sunlight enter slowly, illuminating every corner of the small garden I planted with my own hands. The flowers seemed to have learned to grow stronger, even under unexpected winds, and I can relate to them. Each pot, each leaf I stir, reminds me that I am taking care of what is mine, what I have chosen to grow, without depending on anyone. There's no hurry. Nay, there is no fear. There's just the sense of control that I haven't felt in decades. The scent of jasmine and herbs mixed with sea salt is comforting, as if each aroma was a reminder that I am still the owner of my history, my life, my space. The afternoons are dedicated to my literary translation editor, a project that I have always dreamed of, but that I left dormant during the years of marriage. Now, and the towns. Every paper I organize, every book I review, every author I discover represents not only a professional opportunity, but an affirmation that my dreams are still alive. The work routine is serene, meticulous, and brings a quiet joy that replaces any resentment. It is curious how the silence, which once seemed heavy and oppressive, is now light and welcoming. It allows me to listen to my own ideas, my own wants, my own needs, without the shadow of comparisons or manipulations. And when night comes, I sit in the living room armchair with a cup of tea and allow myself to remember. I remember the early years, full of hope and plans, the short trips to Cape Cod, the Sunday dinners for Celeste, and the conversations that kept a smile on the surface, but carried veiled criticism. I remember the nights when I cried silently in the bathroom, when the longing for the children we never had overwhelmed me. I remember the feeling of invisibility inside the house, even though it was the pillar of it all. But all this does not bring bitterness now. It's memory now, an old book that I need to revisit to understand how far I have come and how I became who I am. I also think of the lessons I learned, hard and silently, that the worst loneliness is the one lived together, that fully trusting someone can be a risk that only time teaches to measure, that patience and silent observation can be powerful weapons, and, more than anything, that dignity is not something that is lost. It is only ignored when we allow others to determine it. Today, there is no resentment. There is relief. Relief for having survived, for having waited for the right moment, for having transformed pain into strategy, and strategy into freedom. Looking at the city in the distance, I think of the 25 years of marriage as chapters in an old book, necessary to form the story, but closed. There was no villainy in me. There was no outburst of anger. What? Just understanding that some people are passengers, and that life becomes light when we decide not to carry them inside us anymore. I didn't beat Darren in the traditional sense. I didn't have to yell, humiliate, how now, this to measure God, or inflict pain. I beat myself. I left the role of victim and returned to being the author of my story. Every decision, every step I took was marked by the awareness that my time is mine, and that my peace does not depend on what others think or do. And between taking care of the flowers, and I want to proofreading translations, and planning the publishing house, I realize that the loneliness I chose is different from the loneliness I suffered. It is light, voluntary, full, pandelion, tearawikia, neshtomishiptas, deramasean. I have close friends, deep conversations, and most of all, Khan, Nitere, I still pure. The freedom to decide my hours, my dates, my priorities. The city of Miami shines outside, but the glow that illuminates me comes from within. I feel whole, complete, protected by the very wisdom I have acquired over so many years. The silence of the house is an embrace, not emptiness. Sometimes I mentally revisit the party at the Watergate. Darren's expression, Sierra, escape, Celeste's downcast gaze. I don't take pleasure in remembering, but there is a sense of justice that warms the heart. Those who tried to reduce me were eventually revealed before the world, and I remained whole, steadfast, serene. Every document I held, every piece of evidence I gathered, every move I made was not just strategy. It was a reminder that truth, when well handled, always prevails. And it is in this moment of reflection that I understand that my greatest victory was not financial. It was not social. It was not a public revenge. It was restoring my own dignity, to be aware that I can walk alone, smile alone, and still feel fulfilled, to have the power to decide about my life without depending on the approval of those who underestimated me for decades, to have the right to dream again. What didn't to create, to invest in myself and my projects, without fear of being betrayed or manipulated. But you notice, don't you, Shigeru-sama, that the end of a cycle, even when painful, no silly, born out, can also be the beginning of something bigger. Now, pain serves as a lesson. Strategy turns into freedom. The solitude that used to be a prison is now a choice. And there is something magical about being able to look back without anger, with the certainty that every tear, every night of silence, every moment of doubt contributed to forming the woman who can finally breathe whole. Now, sitting here, surrounded by books and flowers, with the city lighting up the horizon, I feel like I can finally write the next chapters without a shadow of the past. And even though I know that some hearts and stories will still try to challenge my peace, I smile, because I discovered that true victory is the freedom to be who I am and to never again allow anyone to write my story for me. But you must be wondering, after all this, how was the last contact with Darren? How did he react when he realized that he had lost not only possessions, but the respect and trust of everyone around him? That part of the story. It's surprising. And what happened next? The next morning definitively sealed not only the end of the marriage, but the transformation of my entire life. Are you ready to listen? Because it is now that the cycle is complete, and the answer goes beyond any revenge that can be imagined. Today, my afternoon, sitting in my favorite cafe in Wynwood, watching the soft evening light reflect off the colorful walls, I feel a peace that years ago seemed impossible. The publisher is officially registered, and the first collections of women's short stories that I chose to translate take shape under my hands and watchful eyes. I hired 3 talented young translators, and I see in them the same quiet passion that I have carried for decades. Each project is more than books. It is a legacy of voice, of strength, of women who have learned to rise up after years of silence. Darren, he was finally held accountable. But I knew not so. The debts he took on alone, the loans he tried to mask, the assets he deceived. Everything returned to the natural flow of justice. His life followed a path that he himself chose, but with no more shadows on mine. Celeste, her mother, made you on. Had to readjust too. He sold his mansion and found a smaller, more modest space. Sarah moved on ways, finding a rich new husband. Well, but nothing that could touch me. And me? Whole, free, owner of every decision. No, every step, every day that I will still write. What I learned on this journey is simple and universal. The strength we carry is often quiet, hidden between patience and observation, and just needs the right moment to emerge. I learned that dignity is not negotiable, that silence does not mean weakness, and that protecting oneself is an act of self-love. Life doesn't owe us anything, but it teaches us to choose who we share our steps with and how we transform pain into learning. Every tear, every night of waiting, every calculated decision now contributed to me getting here, not loaded with resentment, but with clarity and freedom. If something from this story touches you, remember why. Your strength is also there, waiting for the time to show itself. We are. And speaking of community, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for accompanying me here. If you are here, hearing, seeing how entered down, oh, next they still but is self this town, feeling, know that your time and attention are silent hugs that warm this channel. So, if you can, leave a like. Think of it as a hug that supports and warms our little family of stories. And sign up as an invitation to go back to drinking coffee together. For more stories and comforting conversations. Comment from which city you are watching, because I love to imagine all the corners of where we got here together. And don't forget to activate the bell. That way you don't miss it when the coffee is brewed again. Don't go away yet. No. Listen to the next real story that will appear on the screen. Always remember, each wrinkle tells a story, and each story carries a strength. Watch the next video here on the channel with another incredible story. And come with me to discover more transformed lives, broken silences, and truths that appear at the right time. Oh, for today, I can only smile. Take a deep breath and write my own chapter, knowing that I am finally whole and free, and that life, with all its complexity, still holds wonderful surprises for those who learn to get up